Valerie Bertinelli storms off the Today Show after heated confrontation with Hoda, Kotb turning what should have been a simple warm morning appearance into the most shocking live television spiral the network has faced in years as millions watched in real time completely stunned while the cheerful smiles on set slowly melted into confusion and tension because Valerie, who showed up that morning believing she was there to celebrate her new cookbook, her healing journey and a fresh chapter in her life, had no idea that producers had rewritten the segment overnight, chasing viral chaos to boost ratings after weeks of internal pressure where executives demanded more raw moments and less predictable positivity, which created a dangerous setup that backfired harder than anyone expected. Since the interview began with harmless questions about comfort food and family memories, but everything changed the moment Hoda leaned forward and shifted the tone, asking about Valerie's weight transformation, divorce and emotional posts implying that Valerie might be hiding something from the public, which made the entire energy collapse instantly as cameras zoomed in and viewers at home felt the air in the room turn heavy because Valerie's expression shifted from soft and open to frozen and deeply hurt while she tried to breathe through the moment, asking calmly if they weren't supposed to keep the conversation focused on her new projects instead of dragging her private healing into the spotlight once again. But Hoda pressed further, saying viewers deserved honesty, which was the final spark that ignited the silent explosion as Valerie responded softly but firmly that healing is not a performance and no one gets to demand a person's pain on live television just to fill airtime, which caused the studio to fall into a silence so thick that even the control room stopped talking for a second before panicking about whether to cut to commercial. But Valerie didn't wait for anyone to decide because she slowly stood up, placed her microphone on the chair and said she would not continue a conversation designed to weaponize vulnerability before walking off the set with complete dignity, leaving Hoda speechless and Savannah Guthrie frozen off to the side while producers scrambled and crew members looked at each other unsure whether they had just witnessed a career-defining moment or a disaster that would haunt the network for years as the Today Show abruptly cut to a random cooking demo that absolutely no one was watching since social media exploded instantly with millions of clips across TikTok, Instagram and YouTube within minutes, while hashtags like #StandWithValerie, #ProtectYourPeace, #TodayShowDisaster and #ValerieDeserves Better trended worldwide as fans flooded the internet with support, saying Valerie had endured decades of public scrutiny from tabloids, weight jokes, internet harassment and heartbreaking losses and deserved respect, not an ambush disguised as an interview, while others attacked the network accusing them of turning into a ratings-hungry tabloid pretending to be a feel-good morning show, especially after recent awkward interviews where guests appeared uncomfortable and viewers had already complained that the Today Show was losing its warmth, which insiders confirmed anonymously, saying producers intentionally pushed for a deep emotional angle, even though Valerie's team had specifically requested a light, positive conversation focused on resilience, not trauma. But the backlash only escalated further when leaked reports claimed Hoda felt blindsided and embarrassed after Valerie walked out, while others insisted she didn't immediately apologize backstage, creating even more tension that spread into the hallways as staff members whispered that executives were furious the moment wasn't handled better, which only fueled the public's distrust when the network released a vague statement saying the moment was unplanned and they support Valerie fully. But people online were not convinced, especially after Valerie posted a short message saying she walked away to protect her peace and that no one is entitled to her healing, which sparked an emotional tidal wave across social media with fans, celebrities, athletes, chefs, authors and former talk show hosts praising her for setting a boundary, while thousands of viewers shared their own stories about walking away from uncomfortable situations and refusing to let others control their narrative, transforming Valerie's exit from a dramatic television moment into a global symbol of self-respect as podcasts, entertainment panels and mental health experts began discussing how daytime TV has relied for too long on forced vulnerability disguised as empathy, and that Valerie's walk-off could mark a permanent shift where audiences finally reject trauma-bait interviews in favor of genuine storytelling, because fans quickly dug up old clips showing Valerie being asked invasive questions over the years, proving this was not a one-time conflict but a breaking point decades in the making. And media analysts warned that audiences today are smarter, more sensitive and no longer willing to accept exploitation as entertainment, especially at a time when people are more protective of mental health, while major advertisers reportedly contacted NBC demanding clarity and threatening to pull sponsorships if the controversy wasn't addressed directly, which pushed executives into emergency meetings strategizing how to repair the damage as rumors circulated that Hoda might deliver a public apology on air, though others said the network was considering ignoring the incident and hoping the attention would fade, but the problem was the internet refused to let the story die because every hour new layers emerged, including leaked emails suggesting the production team had planned a more emotional angle despite Valerie's boundaries, and messages from former guests claiming they too were pushed into uncomfortable territory for the sake of ratings, which turned this situation from a single dispute into a potential industry scandal as entertainment reporters published theories that Valerie may cancel all future NBC appearances and possibly sit down for a long-form interview to finally reveal what really happened behind the scenes, which insiders fear could expose years of internal pressure and emotional manipulation used to create viral moments on live television. As cultural commentators noted that Valerie didn't just walk off a set, she walked away from decades of expectation placed on women, especially women who have aged in the public eye, to stay polite, smile through discomfort, and allow their private pain to be consumed without complaint, and her refusal became a line in the sand, signaling a larger cultural awakening where people no longer tolerate being emotionally cornered just because a camera is rolling. And as the backlash grew, fans demanded the Today Show address the incident openly, calling for accountability training and a shift in interview ethics, while thousands signed online petitions insisting the network apologize publicly and promising to boycott the show until they acknowledged what viewers saw with their own eyes. But the conversation didn't stop there, because mental health advocates stepped in, explaining that what Valerie did was not dramatic but healthy and powerful, since walking away from a harmful environment is sometimes the only way to protect inner peace, especially after surviving years of loss, pressure and public humiliation. And suddenly Valerie's silence became louder than any speech, as her decision turned into a global conversation about boundaries, self-worth, and refusing to let media outlets profit from personal trauma. While fans waited anxiously to see whether Valerie would release a longer statement or appear on another platform like a podcast or streaming interview to finally share her side without being interrupted or twisted by producers who care more about views than humanity. And at the same time, whispers within the industry suggested other celebrities who previously stayed silent about their uncomfortable talk show experiences were now considering speaking out, which terrified networks worried that one walk-off could trigger a domino effect, exposing how many guests were pushed into emotional corners for entertainment value. Since journalists began comparing this moment to past television shifts where a single incident changed the rules forever, warning that the era of staged empathy and forced intimacy might be ending for good, as viewers demanded transparency, authenticity and respect instead of manufactured breakdowns packaged as real moments. And now the Today Show faces a future where every guest appearance will be scrutinized, every interview approach questioned, and every moment judged through the lens of what happened when Valerie stood up and walked away. Because once the world watches someone reclaim their power live on air, there is no going back. And what started as a morning segment turned into a cultural lightning strike that exposed an entire industry's uncomfortable truth, reminding everyone that protecting your peace is not rebellion, it is strength. And now millions are waiting breathlessly for what happens next, since Valerie's silence is still echoing across screens worldwide, her walk-off still trending days later, and the industry still holding its breath, knowing that this moment wasn't the end of a segment, it was the beginning of a reckoning that television can no longer ignore. Valerie Bertinelli storms off the Today Show after heated confrontation with Hoda, Kotb turning what should have been a lighthearted promotional appearance into the most explosive live moment in the show's recent history, as millions of viewers watched in disbelief while the studio atmosphere shifted from cheerful to chilling in just a matter of seconds, because Valerie, who arrived early that morning with a calm smile ready to share stories about resilience, new beginnings and the comfort of cooking, had absolutely no idea that producers had rewritten the interview outline overnight, chasing a viral controversy to boost their slipping ratings after weeks of behind-the-scenes tension where executives demanded more emotional exposure from guests and less safe television, leading to a risky strategy that backfired so dramatically that even longtime crew members were left speechless. Since the segment began normally with Hoda Kotb offering warm small talk about family recipes, childhood memories and Valerie's new projects, but the tone instantly changed when Hoda leaned forward and shifted the conversation toward Valerie's personal struggles, mentioning her divorce, her emotional journey, her weight transformation, and suggesting that perhaps Valerie's recent positivity wasn't entirely genuine, which caused the air in the studio to freeze as every camera operator stopped breathing and the control room panicked, because Valerie's expression shifted from soft and welcoming to stunned and deeply hurt. And instead of answering immediately, she took a slow breath and calmly asked whether they had agreed to focus on her upcoming book rather than turning her private healing into morning entertainment. But Hoda continued pressing, saying viewers deserved honesty, which pushed Valerie to respond with a quiet strength that made the entire room fall silent as She said that healing is not a performance and that no one, especially on live television, gets to demand access to someone's pain just to fill a segment, which visibly rattled Hoda while Savannah Guthrie stood frozen off camera debating whether she should intervene. But before anyone could reset, Valerie placed her hands on the armrest, stood up and removed her microphone, saying she would not continue an interview designed to weaponize vulnerability for ratings, and then she walked off the set with complete composure, leaving Hoda speechless as producers scrambled to cut to commercial and the Today Show audience whispered in shock while the clip instantly exploded online across TikTok, YouTube and Instagram, sparking millions of views within minutes as hashtags like #StandWithValerie, #ProtectYourPeace and #TodayShowFail began trending worldwide, with fans rushing to support Valerie, saying she has survived decades of public scrutiny and deserves empathy, not ambush journalism, while others criticized the network, accusing them of turning into a tabloid disguised as a friendly morning show, especially after multiple recent awkward interviews that viewers already felt crossed emotional boundaries and made guests visibly uncomfortable, which insiders later confirmed, saying producers intentionally pushed for a raw emotional moment. Despite Valerie's team requesting a positive, uplifting segment focused on growth, not trauma, but the backlash only grew when anonymous staff members leaked that after the cameras cut, Hoda allegedly felt blindsided and embarrassed, while other insiders claimed she did not immediately apologize, creating even more tension backstage as public pressure exploded and media outlets rushed to publish headlines calling Valerie's exit the most powerful walk-off in daytime television since the Megyn Kelly controversy, while PR teams worked overtime crafting statements insisting the moment was unplanned and that the show supports Valerie fully. But the internet wasn't buying it, especially after Valerie posted a short message saying she walked away to protect her peace and that sometimes leaving is the strongest thing a person can do, triggering an emotional wave across social media, with celebrities, chefs, authors and former talk show hosts publicly praising her for drawing a boundary, while fans compiled past clips of Valerie being asked invasive questions over the years, proving this wasn't an isolated moment but a breaking point decades in the making. And as the story spiraled even further, advertisers reportedly contacted NBC demanding clarity about what happened, while network executives held emergency meetings to decide whether to address the incident on air or quietly bury it. But the problem was the audience refused to let it die, because think pieces, podcasts and entertainment analysts began discussing how daytime television has relied for too long on forced vulnerability disguised as kindness, and that Valerie's walk-off may be the cultural turning point where viewers finally reject emotional exploitation in favor of genuine respect, as experts warned that audiences no longer accept scripted empathy, staged discomfort or trauma-bait interviews, especially in an era where people value mental health more than manufactured tears. And now rumors are spreading that Valerie may cancel all future NBC appearances and could sit down for a long-form interview revealing exactly what happened behind closed doors, which industry insiders fear could expose a pattern of producers ignoring guest boundaries and prioritizing viral shock value over ethical storytelling, while at the same time supporters are urging Valerie to write a full chapter about this moment in her next book, calling her walk-off not an act of drama but an act of self-respect that struck a nerve around the world, because millions of people recognized themselves in that moment. People who have stayed quiet, smiled through discomfort, or allowed others to dictate their emotional limits until finally deciding enough is enough, and that walking away isn't weakness, it's liberation. As cultural commentators explained that Valerie didn't just leave a set, she ended an era where television expected women, especially women who have been in the public eye for decades, to remain endlessly patient, gracious and available for emotional consumption without complaint. And now the Today Show is left facing the uncomfortable reality that the audience has shifted, the power dynamic has changed, and silence can sometimes become the loudest statement on earth, as viewers wait to see whether Hoda will publicly apologize, whether the network will address the controversy, or whether this moment will lead to a permanent change in how interviews are conducted. Because once someone stands up mid-broadcast and walks away, the world does not forget. And this time Valerie Bertinelli's exit wasn't just a dramatic moment, it became a cultural lightning strike echoing across screens worldwide, reminding everyone that protecting your peace is not only allowed, it's necessary. And now the entire industry is watching, holding its breath, wondering what comes next, as Valerie's silence continues, speaking louder than any scripted apology ever could, and the story is still unfolding with no signs of slowing down.